Hey guys, Nick here with another video. Today is a follow-up video to the video I made, I think it was last week, on how to gain SSH access to a Raspberry Pi when setting up the SD card instead of after the fact and having to plug it into a keyboard, mouse, and monitor. Now for most people that's not a big deal, but I set up a lot of these things and it can be very helpful to just have a little docking station and then SSH straight into it from my computer. So now that we have that set up, I think I did do this in the last video, but I'll reiterate it here. We need to find it on the network. Now the easiest way to do that is going to be to go into your router and look for the Raspberry Pi's MAC address. If you're not familiar with that, or you don't know how to get into your router, maybe you can't for some reason, you can download a tool to your PC like Advanced IP Scanner or Angry IP Scanner. Those are both very well documented programs. You basically download it, it detects what your subnet is, you hit scan, it scans, returns a bunch of IP addresses associated with MAC addresses. Then you can use a website like Mac Vendors to look up what the manufacturer of that device is, and when you find the one that is the Raspberry Pi Foundation, that's the one that you'll want to SSH into. So for me, my Raspberry Pi was at 10.0.0.142, and I actually use a Unify USG. If you want to pick one of those up, the link is in the description, as well as some links to Raspberry Pi Zeros. I like the Vilros kit for the Pi Zero, and I like the Cana kit for like Pi 3s and Pi 4s. Obviously, whatever you choose is up to you. I do earn a commission if you click on the links in the description though, so if you want to help out the channel, that's a pretty easy way to do it if you're thinking about getting one of these devices anyway. So let's jump right in. I've already found my Raspberry Pi's IP address, as you can see from here, and so you're going to type SSH Pi, that's the username, at IP address of the Raspberry Pi, hit enter. If you haven't SSH'd into it before, it's going to ask you if you want to add that device to your PC's security keychain. You can just type yes and hit enter and it'll continue to connect. Windows 10 has a built-in SSH client now, so if you just do Windows key R, you can pull up a little run dialog. The Windows key is the key that looks like Windows, and then R is of course the R key, and then you would just type the same thing, SSH Pi at IP address of Pi, and then the password by default is Raspberry. And I may have mistyped that. Nope, I got it good. Okay, so then the very first thing I always like to do in the Raspberry Pi is just sudo su, because most of the commands we're going to run require sudo. And after the first password check, it doesn't really help you much because whatever you say to sudo, it will just do. So we're going to switch to root here, and then the first thing I always like to do is do an apt update, and apt upgrade. And that'll just run through, do every update it needs to do. Hopefully that'll finish pretty quickly here. And what we're going to be doing today is setting up a Pi-hole ad blocking service on our network. It blocks it at the DNS level, so it prevents callouts to even the domains that are on whatever blacklist you choose to apply. And we're going to go through all of it, so I'm going to try and break this video into some chapters for you. The first thing we're going to talk about is setting up the network settings on the Pi itself, and then towards the end of the video we'll get into actually configuring your devices to use that device as their DNS server. I'm running Manjaro Linux with the KDE desktop environment, but most of what I'm doing is going to be done from the Pi's perspective. So the only thing different between this setup and setting this up on something like Windows or Mac OS is the SSH client that you choose to use. And on those systems, you'll just have to figure it out for yourself. I touched on the default option in Windows 10, and I believe the Mac OS terminal has a built-in option for SSH. So it's going to use an additional 7.8 megs. Oops, let's shoot. I hit T to abort. Great, so let's cancel that reading app list. Did not mean to hit T. Apt upgrade, and it's going to ask me that same question again, and this time I'll hit Y for yes. You can bypass this by just doing apt-y. I don't always like to do that because I do like to see what it is updating. So we'll go ahead and let this complete, and I tell you what, I'm just going to pause the video while I do this. Well, that certainly took a few minutes. Let's pick up where we left off. The very next thing we're going to do is set our locale information. So to do this, we're going to go raspi-config config. And from within here, you can see all these different things: system options, display, interface, performance. What we are mostly concerned with is localization. We want to set our locale. Don't worry, it's going to pull up the thing here. There we go. And by default, it's ENGB. You'll want to set it for whatever your locale is. ENGB, UTF-8, UTF-8. And we want to go down to ENUS for me, UTF-8, UTF-8. Tab OK. And let's see, for the entire system, ENUS, UTF-8. And it's going to do its thing. It'll take it a minute. It even tells us that this might take a while, so take another little break. I don't think this takes as long as the update, but hopefully I'm right. Regardless, I can just pause the video and pick it back up. It's going to be kind of a long video anyway. Okay, so as I thought, that did not take as long as doing apt update. I'll click back into my terminal window here. We want to go back to localization options, go to time zone, warning, blah, blah, blah. And we want to choose US. I am in the Eastern time zone. Okay, back to localization options, keyboard. Sometimes this part doesn't work that well. If it doesn't work that well, you just don't feel like doing it. You don't really have to deal with it. Sometimes it just crashes out. Yep, that's what it did. It crashed out, but that's okay. What we really want to make sure is that we get pipe, and then we're not even going to worry about wireless LAN because we are going to disable that unless you're planning on using this as a wireless device. Let's go system options, wireless LAN. Oh no, it's the opposite of what I want to do. That's asking me to set it up. Don't want to do that. So then smart thing to do is change the password. I'm not going to do that in this case because I'm not going to continue using this for Pi-hole after I make this video, but you should change your default login password to something secure. After that, we want to reboot now, and it's going to close the connection, and then we'll just go ahead and pull up that SSH, and then the Pi will reboot. It does not take very long to do that. And while it's rebooting, we'll talk about today's sponsor, which is Hard Work. Hard Work is today's sponsor, as well as Saturdays. That's one of my favorite sponsors to make videos like this. So big shout out to Saturdays. I hope there's no business called Saturdays. I don't actually care about that. I'm talking about the day. I don't have any sponsors for this video in case you haven't figured it out. Let's get back into our Raspberry Pi. Unless it won't let us, of course. Then we'll just sit and wait patiently. Nope, there we are. So password again is going to be Raspberry for me. Alright, so we're back in, and it's going to complain because I'm using the default password. So then we are going to edit our network settings on the Raspberry Pi because we want to give this thing a static IP address. So I'm going to do sudo su. I'm going to do nano/etc/dhcpcd.conf, and that is dhcpcd.conf. So you can see here, it's got all this stuff. And the reason we're going to give it a static IP address instead of a dynamic IP address is because if it has a dynamic IP address and we set our devices to use it and it renews its DHCP lease and gets a different IP address, then devices will try and do a DNS lookup against this device that may not have that IP address anymore. So we want to give it a static. And in this case, I'm just going to give it the IP address that it currently has. So I'm going to give it. You would not want to do this. You would actually want to do it outside of your DHCP range. So then let's delete the static routers, and this is, I think it's 10.0.0.1. for me, but it's going to be whatever the IP address of your router is. Static domain name servers. No IP6. So it's going to do all of its DNS lookups against 10.0.0. Let's make it 250. That's my actual DNS server, and that is a Pi-hole, so that'll be interesting. A Pi-hole, looking at a Pi-hole. All right, so here is our static IP configuration. We're not going to mess with IP6. I don't use it in my network. Odds are you don't either. So then in Nano, to save our changes, we hold the control key, hit the O key, and then we just leave its name alone, hit enter, hold the control key, strike the X key, and we're back out where we were. We can reboot now, but if you change it to something else, you will want to reboot. But if you're not changing it to something else, then there's no need to reboot. So in this case, there is no need to reboot. So the next thing that we're going to do is install Pi-hole, finally, yay. And this is pulled straight from the Pi-hole website, which is linked in the description, so if you need help or anything, go bug those guys, or post comments here, it's totally fine, I don't care. Control-Shift-V, so then what we're doing is putting in curl, using Secure Sockets Layer, https install.piehole.net, which is essentially just a script, and we're piping that through bash, meaning we're telling it to execute the script using bash or interpret the script using the bash command line. It's the equivalent of like a batch file on Windows. It's just a scripted file that runs a preset list of commands. So we do this, and there's a chance that curl won't be installed, in which case all we do is tell it to install. Oh, nope, see, there we've got a little Raspberry Pi Pi-hole thing, and it's going to do some updates. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video again and rejoin you once I'm at the configuration page. Sit tight. Okay, OBS decided to crash, so I am relaunching this and re-recording everything that I just did, so this is fun. So we are at the Pi-hole automated installer. This is what comes up when you first get done with the main installation of Pi-hole. So this is where you actually configure it. So we're going to hit enter for OK. Please donate to Pi-hole. We want to keep this software available to everyone. Yes, it's telling us we need a static IP, and we want to use ETH0 and not WLAN 0 because wireless is going to be slower, and we need this thing to be pretty quick, at least with its connection speed. And then it's going to ask us to use which DNS resolver we want to use. So I'm just going to pick Quad 9 here. You can choose the one of your choice and research each one of them yourself. And then the default block list is Stephen Black's block list, which is actually a pretty good block list out of the box, but we may add a couple here in a few minutes. So then we want to block IPv4 and 6, and then the gateway IP address, this thing's IP address, all that's correct. And then it's going to warn us about what I talked about earlier of why you would want to put it outside of your DHCP scope. If you want to see a video on how to do something like that, drop a comment down below and let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do it. And then yes, we want to install the web admin interface, and yes, we want to install the web server, and yes, we want to log queries, and I want it to show everything. A lot of this can be configured after the fact through the web interface, so you can just wait until that's done. And then this should not take very long once we get going with it. I don't know what it's going to do here because I already have a lot of this stuff installed. So it's either going to go faster or it's going to start throwing an error saying that stuff's already installed. So it's restarting the service, cool. Enabling it to start on reboot, that's good. You want this thing to start running every time the device comes on. And this is great. Now, people have asked me before about, oh, couldn't I just forward ports to my Pi-hole and then use this as my DNS anywhere? The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes, but don't. In order to access your Pi-hole from outside your network, it's much, 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 much safer to set up a VPN connection to it. In that instance, you are going to be limited by your service provider's upload speed. So, you know, for instance, I have like 250 down, 5 up, and 5 up is not super quick. Maybe it's 10 up. Either way, it's not fast enough for being on the go. Okay, so this, you will want to remember this stuff. Your admin webpage login password is unchanged. I don't know what it was before, so we'll see. In fact, that's going to be a problem probably. So let me pause the video here and reset that password real quick. Once you get a completed setup page, it does show you what your admin login is, so I will just have to create a new one and then log in. Okay, refreshed my memory on this. It's actually really easy to do. It's just pi-hole-p for password. Oh wait, sorry, pi-hole-a-p for pi-hole-admin-p for password, and then it wants me to enter a new password. New password is just going to be Nickel Gandhi. Same password I use for my bank login information, strangely enough. Just kidding. Don't use it anywhere. Do not reuse passwords, people. It's bad, bad, bad. Okay, so now that will be my web page login password. And I'm going to open a new private window, and we will go to 10.0.0.142. And, oh yeah, it's /admin. And there is no username, so you can see it's already got 85,386 domains on the block list. That's pretty good. Nothing blocked yet because nothing is actually using this for its DNS. We'll go to login, enter Nickel Gandhi. And at this point, this thing is totally ready to use. All you would need to do to use it is set your DNS settings to use it. So I'll click down here, go to configure, and we'll change this here wired connection, IPv4 settings, and then method automatic only addresses, and we'll go 10.0.0.142. That is going to be my new DNS server. Yippee. And then you'll see still no queries, but if I go here and I say let's go to Shippy Galima, I don't know what's going to come up, but you'll see dashboard should update. Should see that it has a client now. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's too slow. Or maybe I just didn't correctly set my static setting. No, it did. Should be good. Let's pull up our terminal here. Exit the Pi. IPA. NSLookup. Oh yeah, it still says it's using the 10.0.0.250. So I should be able to say exit NSLookup and say NSLookup (142), and it still finds it. And now I should actually have some lookup here. Oh, and actually it does look like it's looking stuff up. Cool. So permitted domains here, localhost here, google.com here, and then let's say youtube.com. Oh, wow, I'm not signed in. This is what you see when you're not signed in? Good Lord. Humanity is circling the drain, people. Let's go to... Well, let's not go to IP Chicken. You don't need to know my IP address. Ha! Let's go to ASDF and just do some searches. Just propagate these results here. It says I have 2 clients. What are my 2 clients? Localhost and then me. Oh, yeah, okay. So I think I'm still using my old DNS, or my actual DNS server on this device, even though I've set it to not do that. It's not respecting those settings for some reason. I should be able to change that here. That's what I've told it to do. Okay, I was finally able to get my Manjaro machine to respect the DNS settings I was giving it. Nothing a simple reboot couldn't fix. So now you can see I've had it running for a couple days. If you look at the date here, it's now a different day. I had to abandon it for a while because, well, duty calls. You can see here there's various different domains showing up under permitted, and then there's blocked domains showing up here. But just real quick, I'm going to take you somewhere. Oh sure, let's find out why Detroit residents pushed back against tree planting. Great, thanks GetPocket. Usually this stuff is littered with ads, and you can see here there are no advertisements. Let's go to YouTube in an incognito window because I'm signed in and I have YouTube Premium, so there naturally wouldn't be any ads. But you can see here I'm not signed in, and we can see whatever the garbage that YouTube tries to shove down your throat is. So that's that. So it blocks a lot of ads even just with the default list, so that's kind of a nice thing. But if you wanted to add lists, you can simply Google search for the list, or use DuckDuckGo or something like that. That's a bit more privacy respecting. You can also manually add domains to the blacklist, so that's kind of a cool thing. What you would do to add a block list is you go into settings, hit add lists. Oh, sorry, it's actually under the group management, and then add lists here. And you can see this is just the standard list that we saw when we were setting it up in the command line interface. But what you can do very easily is hit add and then feed it a URL. Oops, feed it a URL from here, give it a little comment to say what it is and what it blocks usually, and then you just hit add and it will add it down there. There's all kinds of block lists available depending on what it is you need to block. If you want to block adult content, if you have kids, then there are lists for that. You can block known tracking URLs. You can block all of the Microsoft telemetry if you have a Windows 10 computer. There's a few versions of that specific list actually. Some of them block everything including Windows Update and like the time server and connectivity check. Other ones just block all of the extra telemetry and still allow Windows Update and things like that to work. So it's really up to you what you want to block. But at this point, I think this video has gone on long enough. I can make another video for those of you who are interested in learning more about how Pi-hole works and DNS-based network blocking works. But if you like this video, make sure you leave a like. If you want to see other videos, or you have an idea that you want me to cover, for a topic you want me to cover, leave a comment down below. Also, let me know your thoughts on some of the new Galaxy phones. I kind of don't use any of those phones anymore, but I'd still be willing to get my hands on one just so I could show you some mods and tweaks and different things, because those are always there. That's just the nature of Android. So if you want to see something like that, make sure you leave a comment down below, and I can make a few videos about that. Those tend to perform pretty well. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.